Oh, I hear you now. I hear you now.
Yeah, so apparently there is something with sound source and some combination of updates over the past, I don't know, month. Because when I quit sound source, uh, it still took a moment to connect, but it did eventually connect.
Yeah, it seemed like it was there was like an intermediary step of some sort. If you hadn't said anything, I would have like ignored it. But like I could tell there was something going on there.
Now, what's interesting is I know that I'm getting audio, but my uh, meters are not changing, and I think it's just because without sound source, the looping and all isn't quite the same. But it makes me want to double check the recording.
Hmm. How are you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. I until I sat down to call you, totally forgot that Apple had a thing this morning.
Yeah, I didn't know about it at all until I happened to see I think it was something on YouTube. It might have even just been a headline browsing online.
Oh, okay.
Like I just didn't realize there was an event at all today.
Well, it's really odd this close to Dub Dub. Like it feels like this would have been they probably wanted to have this event back in March. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to find a confirmation that things are recording.
Oh, okay. Do you want to just stop and listen to make sure the recording is there?
Yeah, hold on. Because I didn't see any kind of waveform, but I'm seeing it like otherwise. So let me just confirm. I mean, there's at least something there. Okay. Well, it's at least I can confirm that something is being written, so I can. It just means that I'm not concerned about there being nothing there. It's just strange that the meters aren't moving at all, and I have no doubt it has to do with the combination of reasons why sound source is messing up too. But like I have no monitor in my ear either, which was why I
Oh
wanted to
wow.
confirm.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
All right. So I at least know that the mic is recording to a file. So even if I can't hear everything else, I will have audio of some sort. And we'll see if it's decent quality or if I've got something else going on that I need to address too.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I didn't realize there. I think it was when I was scrolling through news. I might have seen a headline about the new iPad, and that might have been what it was. It was either that or I saw something in a thumbnail on YouTube when I was scrolling through. One of the two sources tipped me off to there was an event today, and I had to go Google Apple events and confirm.
Yeah, I can't remember where I first saw it, but I kept seeing maybe on Instagram it telling me that it was going to be on. You could watch it live on YouTube. So they're heavily promoting YouTube over anything else. It seems, um, or they're I don't know heavily promoting, but they're promoting YouTube over anything else that I've seen, and which makes sense. There's a lot of there are far more viewers there than probably using the Apple TV or Apple TV Plus.
Well, and they make it difficult to find anymore since
Oh, I
they
know.
left the events applet or whatever you want to consider it no longer is the go-to source. When they lumped it into the TV app, it kind of got lost.
I like the TV app, um, but it just needs. There's just some tweaking it needs to get it like where it's the best one. And I've noticed that the TV app has told me, "Hey, this thing that you're watching on HBO Max, you could watch it here." Or it would. I guess it would access it. I haven't tried it, so have you tried that feature?
I don't think so. Like I know what you're talking about. I don't think I've had anything that I've actually selected and had it pull up otherwise.
Oh. Yeah, I just usually just go into the thing. So anyway, how's your first official week of? How was your first official week?
Trying to think of how to phrase it. Right?
I was gonna say self-employed.
Yeah, first official week of not having something competing with self-employment is probably a better way to think of it. Yeah. No. So I knew, and I even mentioned to my significant other that the first couple of weeks were going to be very much take a step back and kind of relax and go through some training material and reference material to get further along with a different editing program. I think I mentioned it on the show. I decided I wanted to learn DaVinci Resolve and use it instead of Final Cut Pro 10 for a few different reasons. We don't necessarily have to go into them, but the predominant thing is the ease of availability of a keyboard that works with it, that has the shuttle wheel, jog wheel control. And I think that was most of what we talked about when we talked about it.
I think so.
But anyway, and so I took last week and I went through their beginner's guide and did their certification test with it because it's all free. So I don't see that it's overly difficult. If you know anything about the application, you should be able to pass it. But this week I've started going through the editor's guide. There are 3 other guides that I plan to go through. I probably won't go through all of them before I have some other stuff, because like Friday I've got some production lined up to start on a project that will be announced shortly thereafter, I hope. I've kind of alluded to it in the past. A few people know word of mouth, but it'll be a different avenue of business than I had originally anticipated being involved in, but it's still in line with the whole video production and all. It's just that I will be owning distribution of this one, so it's kind of exciting to add that to my repertoire. But we'll do the initial video production, so the initial shoot will start Friday. I don't know exactly how long it's going to be and how many weeks of shooting we'll have, because we'll do probably 1 day a week for a couple hours at a time to get all the material before it actually officially is cut together and released. So it's kind of a slow rollout, but intentionally so, based on the content and everything else. But I mean, the short answer to the question is it's been good. You know, I've been able to just kind of relax. I did find a couple of really glaring omissions I had as a one-man production shop. But only if I need to be in front of the camera, which makes it kind of an obvious glaring omission in retrospect.
And what is that?
An external monitor, so I can actually see the framing of the camera from across the room.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have ordered one, and it will be here tomorrow. And it's funny that it is a glaring oversight, but at the same time, I've always been behind the camera. It's never been needed for me up until this point. So just kind of interesting.
Is it different? Is it more than just like a display or a television?
Yes. Well, you can get just a compact monitor that would be like just your HDMI capable display. I opted to go ahead and, because it was roughly the same cost, I opted to go ahead and get a monitor that included the ability to record the HDMI data stream. So you could output 8K or 4K or whatever. Like, you can choose your codec and resolution and everything, depending on the camera model and all that you have. You can output that into this device to record as well. So if the camera can't record the data stream internally because it doesn't have the capabilities to record that fast to appropriate media, you could do recording via HDMI, which would be faster to record a higher bitrate data stream, or more closer to RAW or cinema codecs. Just, it all depends on what you have. There's a lot that I've learned about this over the past week. Because you could also record straight to an SSD if your camera supported that, as opposed to the internal media. Internal media could be slower than what could be required for even 4K recording. So depending on the camera. But yeah, so go ahead.
I was going to say SD cards are quite a bit slower than
yes.
Other
so I actually, over the past week, I have added a number of things to my repertoire. I didn't have to for a couple of them, but like the R5C supports compact flash type B, and that's what it would record like higher bitrate codecs to internal to the camera, or it can record to SSD or HDMI for 8K and RAW formats. But I went ahead and bought a CF Express Type B card so that I had available access to the different codecs in camera just to play with. Like that was a non-necessary expense, but it was something that I decided I wanted to have access to just to compare. But the monitor, I specifically bought the one I bought because it could record over HDMI for the higher bit rates. So if I connected it to the other camera that I've got, it actually opens up being able to record in HDR 422 at 4K on both cameras instead of just the Canon to the CF Express. And then I also added basically a wireless transmitter. So instead of it being a monitor, you plug an HDMI cable into this transmitter and you use an app on the phone or the iPad and it becomes the monitor. So that was quite a bit less expensive, and I bought it as a secondary option in case I really needed two different monitors for something where I was going to be in front of the camera, because I didn't want to buy two monitors at the higher cost point if the second one I just needed a reference for framing. You know, it was my less expensive way to handle two cameras if I needed to have me in front of both. And I don't anticipate needing to use two cameras if I'm recording me, because that's just a lot. But I wanted the option just in case. Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, that was a lot of, if you don't know the gear and tech and we're not visibly showing it to you, like I can see how I can get lost in description.
No, I think I, more or less, as much as I, without studying it a little bit further.
But it does mean that I'm looking forward to being able to play around with some things. Going back to the other project that I had teased last year, the solo project, that door is now open going forward, because if I'm already doing all this other stuff, there's no reason not to familiarize myself with the gear and play with it to make that a reality at the same time. So I'm looking forward to finally getting some content for Renegade Noble and officially having it launched this year as well.
Cool. So are these the same as like a PVM?
I mean, basically, it's for all intents and purposes, I would say yes. There are some differences, but it's more differences on the capabilities with regard to video capture than anything. I guess the primary, it's
because like a PVM wouldn't have had like a lot of these well,
I mean,
maybe.
It could, but like, so as I was saying that, I was thinking about some of the capabilities for the one that I ordered, and you can load different profiles onto the monitor for different looks that you're using in post-production as well, which makes it very specific to video production applications. So I would say it's more advanced than just a PVM.
It's not just okay.
But you could go just a pure display route if that's all you needed. Like I could have saved about $100 and gotten what amounts to a just larger display that I could turn around and see from across the room easily, where I could tell whether the image was in focus and everything, or I could add the $100 to it and have some of these other capabilities. And like, to me, that's a no-brainer, because I may not need them now, and I may not need them ever, but it gives me the opportunity if I do need them. And so it's more, I'm willing to spend $100 to not be limited,
Gotcha. I didn't mean to do these out of order, but I noticed that you had the topic there about the Apple event.
They were not in any specific order, so it works fine. I did not take the time to really come up with notes. I just had a couple of quick things I wanted to make sure I highlighted. And so while we're on the topic, one of the things I put in there, I know last week's audio quality for me was not its usual,
I'm a little
usual
behind.
quality. I don't know how noticeable it is to other people. Like, I noticed it, but then again, I'm immersed in editing the show every week as well. So it may not be something that's overly noticeable, but I noticed it and it bugged me. So I figured I would call it out.
I had a topic idea.
All right, what you got?
We talked about we've talked about the trolley problem. Is it the trolley problem?
Yeah, the trolley problem.
Yeah. Well, have you seen the bear man problem? That's what I'm calling it. I don't know that it's officially gotten a name, but have you seen anything about this?
I don't think so.
Okay, perfect. I mean, even if you had it would have been perfect anyway. So it's an interesting problem because it's like it hurts and it hurts in a lot of ways. And I love the thing I've seen where people have said, if you don't understand why this is a problem, then you are part of the problem. And so I think you'll get this. So the idea is, if your daughter was out in the woods by herself, or some woman of importance to you, doesn't even have to be your daughter, some woman of importance to you is out in the woods, which would you rather her be with, a man or a bear?
Ooh,
I know.
my gut instinct is to say bear.
Right, because the bear might not be hungry.
Well, and yeah, it's definitely not going to be toxic in many other different ways. Like, I feel like that needs so many more descriptors to be able to answer it.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I know. I acknowledge that. I think you have to answer bear, or you don't understand that there's a problem.
Right. I mean, I could see how you could say. I mean, if you said man, that doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the problem. I think just the fact that you have to think about it. Because
So here's the funny thing. Here's my caveat. If the female in question has received self-defense training, I would say the man is fine.
Right. Okay. But see, you can't,
but
that's
that
also part of the problem.
That describes the problem. Yeah.
Right. So, and it's just like, so if you change it as like, okay, whether it's your, change it to, would you rather add a woman? Let's say, would you rather the person in question, the woman in question, the daughter, the woman, would you rather her be with a bear or another woman? What do you say?
Woman, easy.
Yeah, like there's no question. You don't even have to think about that, and that is the problem.
Oh yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like, as soon as you started describing it, I knew where it was going, and
right.
I mean, I think this kind of gets to the heart of what bugs me so much about the debate in general, because there's no debate. Like, the problem is that, just generally speaking, violence against other people, not even taking into account the difference between genders, just violent behaviors, are a traditionally and statistically higher male problem than anything else. And we refuse to acknowledge and address it. Like, as a guy, I don't even want to be out in the woods with a guy over a bear. Like, sure, I can probably take the guy easily enough, but at the same time, if it's a 300-pound former wrestler, I don't necessarily have my odds. I'd rather wrestle the bear. Again, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
So it looked like FaceTime crashed on my side that time.
Oh wow!
So I may be in a rebuild mode before too long. It's probably overdue. What was the last thing you heard?
When you started talking, the audio went out pretty quickly.
Okay. I don't know exactly how I prefaced it, but one of the things that I did mention was that you could actually change it to would you rather be in the woods with a bear or another guy? And I probably would choose the bear.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like my first thought was like, no, I think I could choose the guy, but then I thought about, no, that's all we're saying. That's the only information you're given, another man or a bear, and I'm like, oh, I think I quickly switched in my head my answer because I'm like, there's a decent chance that the bear's not hungry, and if it's honestly, if it's a black bear, they're probably going to be running. You make enough noise, they're probably going to run away from you, unless they're just really hungry. But yeah, no, just the fact that you even have to consider it is a huge problem with our. I don't even think it's society. It is like this I think transcends all societies in the world. I can't think of a society where the men are better.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you're getting at is it's not necessarily a uniquely American thing in this particular case.
It's not even Western. It's not even Western. It's not even, like, I mean, I guess all societies are patriarchies, and that might be why. I'm not sure.
Well, not all. There are matriarchies, but I think I think it's very much a just generally accepted masculine problem. Or
Yes.
that's not the best way to phrase it, but yeah, I mean, you get where I'm going with it. Like any patriarchy, this is problematic.
Now, do you think this is something that is inherent to human being males, or do you think this is learned?
I think it's learned. I think it's. Go ahead.
I was gonna say. I think I was gonna just copycat you and say I think a lot of it's learned.
Yeah, I do think most of our problems with regard to male behaviors are very much learned from just stereotypes in general. I don't see it being a uniquely genetic predisposition or biological predisposition. I think it's very much the way males are brought up as opposed to the way females are brought up in any society. And that's overly broad, but it's it's learned behavior.
Yeah, I can't say that it's not. I certainly can't say that it's not. So
I guess the biggest thing is I can't point to examples where I would say it's purely biological or purely genetic predisposition. And yes, there are differences in like rage and anger levels and all that you could certainly say have some genetic influence or some biological component as opposed to learned behavior. But the problems that we generally encounter aren't tied to those things as best I can tell. Now, granted, I haven't done, meta-analysis of any studies or anything either, but it seems to very much be more of a privilege mindset than it is anything else. Like men think something is justifiably theirs for the taking, and that is a learned behavior.
yeah, the only thing I can think of elsewhere in the animal kingdom, where where the male is dangerous is the first thought I thought about was like when a male lion takes over a pride, he typically kills any of the cubs, any of them. Any of the cubs. Um, and I think rats do a similar thing, but it's well, I'll just stick with the lion. But that's we understand why that instinct is there, and it's different than humans.
And it seems to be very much rooted in I want my genetics to be carried on, not the genetics of my rivals.
Right, where the issue the issue at hand regarding human men has nothing to do with genetics. It's that human men can be pretty terrible.
Yeah, they want pleasure and to think they are owed pleasure is what it really comes down to.
Or just I mean, Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's pleasure. Like so.
No.
I mean, we could get into the weeds a little bit on how it's defined and how it's described. But if you take a step back and think about someone who is enjoying pain inflicted upon somebody else, it's still pleasure for them. You know, we kind of
Right.
dismiss that a lot of times as a different thing than sexual pleasure, but they're rooted in the same biological need, or physiological need, rather, not biological, and the same psychological need. It's, I want to control or inflict my whims on this person, whether it's violently or sexually or uh, emotionally, manipulatively. There's a lot of lees there.
Yeah.
But all of them are still rooted in the same general desire, and it's the desire to control and bend someone else to your will, basically. And that's the problem. Like, I don't know that any other group aside from men exhibit that type of behavior as prevalently as they do. Like, you certainly don't see it in um, species of apes or other more intelligent animals. And you definitely don't see it in less intelligent animals, where it's very much rooted in, uh, furthering the bloodline, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's very much a uniquely human thing with regard to the drive behind it, and it's a result of higher cognitive functioning that creates that drive, but it's rooted in a more of a primal, or I think it's rooted in more of a primal instinct that is learned through that cognitive understanding. If that makes sense. It's really difficult to explain how a behavior that is rooted in, like, uh, just base raw emotional feedback is cognitive in nature. It's, I don't know of a good way to describe it other than that.
But now I want to go and, now I'm wondering, do dolphins do this? Because I know dolphins engage in rape. And now I'm wondering, do dolphins do other things? What is, at this point, what is the motivation for that from a dolphin? And I don't know if it's known or not. I just, knew that it was a thing.
Yeah, I mean,
So
good question.
Now it makes me curious. Not that it makes anything better, but it's just, it's like it is understood that the dolphins are a pretty intelligent animal, and depending on which fiction you read, more intelligent than humans, because they just go into outer space right before the world is blown up.
Yeah.
And that's not a spoiler.
It's tough to say, because even as I was saying it, you take a step back, and I could not say definitively that primates are not also guilty of similar actions. I should rephrase that, other primates, since we are also technically primates.
Right. I can't remember which species of ape engages in this, but there's one species of ape that engages in tribal warfare. This group of apes will go and attack and kill and murder another group of apes. I don't remember which one it is. And humans have been compared to it, and I think there's I've seen some. No, so I'll just say none of this is something that I've further investigated to know what's the word I'm looking for. I've not verified my sources and checked that they are solid sources, but I just remember hearing about some of these things when I was in college, and then hearing about them again through some form of educational media on the internet. So take all of this with a grain of salt. And
well, realistically, every conversation we have should be taken with a grain of salt, just to clarify.
Right. Try not to I won't knowingly say say something that is not true.
Right. So, yeah, same.
This is not the Joe Rogan. This is not the Joe Rogan show.
Right. And yes. Orangutans and chimpanzees typically tend to be the two that are most prolifically linked, so I would wager it was one of those, but I certainly would not want to definitively place my bets on either.
So I think it's the chimpanzees that will go and kill each other, and the orangutans that don't. Anyway, it just there is some, but see, that's not the same thing. I don't think that if it's the chimpanzees that I'm thinking of that are going and killing other groups of chimpanzees, it's like, well, you don't have to be afraid of your, female chimpanzee with the other male chimpanzees, or maybe chimpanzees are more promiscuous than, I don't know. So, but as long as the chimpanzees are, do they need consent? I don't know. 'Cause, at this point, it's more important to solve it in our species than the chimpanzees, I think. But then that also sounds cruel too.
But I laughed because I was reading something earlier talking about consent with cats and cuddling, and it being turned around that my cat stands on my shoulder and purrs and rubs against my head, and I don't consent, and it doesn't seem to bother the cat. But consent is one of those tricky things, right? Is there a requirement for understanding conscious thought in order for consent to come into the picture, or is there just a primal acceptance of a behavior that could be considered consent as well? And I think that's why we have trickier legal situations a lot of times than what we would like to have, because in my mind it requires some conscious acknowledgement of, yes, I agree. But I also understand that there's a debate about what consent actually means. You might not consciously, and not to be confused with someone being unconscious and raped, right? I'm not wanting to use consciously in that term, but more a matter of, do you have to actively think the thought of, I want to engage in this behavior, or is it more a matter of not thinking consciously that I don't want to engage in this behavior? Because those are two very different things. And there's a difficulty in understanding physiological response and biological response as opposed to emotional baggage and attachment and psychological trauma that makes it just a real big bag of a lot of shit, right? That you have to wade through.
It's a lot of of,
and
there are a lot of
And I don't want to make light of any of it. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get at is just that if all of those things are a component of consent, so if it requires, behavioral, psychological, emotional, physiological understanding of the thought of consent, then I don't think anything other than humans are capable of consent. That's a long-winded way of getting to that point. But then, if that's the case, could any other species truly be considered rapists? Going back to the dolphins.
The dolphins.
Yeah.
It's a good question, but I think, I don't know. But one of the things that you said, it just, I was going to say, even just in humans, in humans themselves, consent can be tricky there in the sense that I don't want to say that you can trick somebody into consenting, but maybe you can.
I think it's plausible.
Yeah,
and I think
about
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think about that that issue with Aziz Ansari. Like there was a. Do you recall what I'm talking about?
Yes.
He did get consent, but I think we all sat on the outside and saw how it went down, and be like, that doesn't. Even though she consented, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good how that was attained.
Yeah, it's such a tricky subject. It really is, because you don't want to you don't want to dismiss valid concerns, right? There are
Right.
easily ways that you can look at someone who is not well developed, either mentally or psychologically, being led to a conclusion and that being problematic. Similarly, though, and I think this is really the big problem, the age of consent does not align with physiological maturity. And that is in and of itself problematic, because if you cannot regulate or attempt to regulate emotion at the age of consent, then emotion can drive decision, and we know that emotionally driven decisions are inherently problematic. So, just from a purely physiological level, prior to the prefrontal cortex being fully developed, how could you accurately provide consent? Like, that's where I think that is the root problem of why things become so tricky with regard to human behavior.
Going back to the thing that you said about the difference between, you know, choosing to consent and choosing not to consent, maybe, I know maybe the thing there is, does one negate the other? Is it a either or situation?
I think so. I think any conscious thought of maybe not immediately throws the flag. Like, it's
Right.
If there's any sense of doubt or anything else, then it should be full stop. Nope, that's not consent. The problem is, how can you prove that later? Because if you personally, you're in a situation, you personally have these thoughts, you do not voice them, and you go forward, well, then that's consent by way of not providing lack of consent.
Well, I think that at point, I think at that point, like the kind of way that you need to be as a man, like as an upright man in this society, is to, confirm, hey, like, I think consent is important here, and I feel like we're in like an unknown area or a gray area.
So I understand the thought process there, but
Yeah.
take a step back and think about it from the standpoint of, as a person in that point, nothing triggers a thought in your mind that there is a lack of consent. It's completely
True.
internalized on the part of the other side. That becomes the problematic area, right? Like, it's there. There are a lot of reasons to blame men for a lot of different things. I don't want to say there's not, right? Like, that there are legitimate problems, but there's also a point where there has to be an acknowledgement of, it does take two people to progress down a path, typically speaking, as far as outside the scope of violent activity. If And in that particular scenario, if the other person doesn't at least voice some level of uncertainty, I don't think it's fair to say you have to be overly mindful of anything else that could trigger a thought of uncertainty overall. Because I would not expect that if the roles were reversed either. Like, does that make sense? Like, it's the whole point of...
I follow.
Yeah. So I agree that there are a lot of problems with men. Wholeheartedly, full stop. A lot of things need to be addressed. But there has to be some level of, if I am uncertain, I have to speak it. And that goes for both sides, like men and women.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah. That's just a person thing.
If there is any level of uncertainty, that means there is a lack of consent. And I think that's the bridge that we need. That's the part that is not, codified or enshrined or acknowledged or ingrained in behaviors in general. If there is even the slightest hint of hesitation, that means there is not complete willing consent, and that needs to stop. And either have a conversation or not go forward. Like and the awareness
Yeah.
of that being the thing is what we need to promote and help guide everybody through. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point to make, is that consent needs to be 100%. Non-consent does not have to be whole. It can only be partial.
Less
Like
than 1%. It's and that's
right.
the reason I mentioned that they're two different things. Either and you could feel completely consensual and have a doubt, and that means it's not consensual. Like, that's why it is so problematic.
Well, at that point, you have to figure out what it is. Either stop and leave, or resolve whatever is
right
the source of that doubt.
At that point, it has to be up to the individual about whether it's consensual or not. I mean, well, to an extent. I would like to say, in a perfect world, if there's any inkling of uncertainty, then that means that both people would acknowledge, hey, you know what? Let's just pause and we'll talk, or go watch a movie or whatever. That's not how things are going to work. And maybe they should, but at the same time, I don't think
it's not going to be expected. Yeah.
Right.
It's not.
So I think that, and in that particular scenario, if it comes down to, hey, there's someone who believes it's completely consensual and has this ever so slight doubt, but doesn't voice it, or maybe voices it but still voices a desire to continue, you have to leave the choice up to that individual in that particular scenario. And it's not clean, and it's difficult with regard to ramifications after the fact if there was a legal problem, but I think that's the only fair way to approach the behavioral side of it. And if you want to create some legal structure for it that codifies that, then you've got a hell of a job ahead of you.
Yeah.
Like there's a point where you can only explain behavior so well in text.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part, where there's going to be a lot. Like, human interactions have a lot of gray, and legal. The law is not great at accounting for those gray areas.
It's interesting. I don't know where I heard it, so I don't know. I would love to be able to attribute the source. So if anybody ever happens to hear this and can point me in the right direction, I would love to know the actual source. But I heard once before, the law operates in the black and white, and humanity operates in the gray. And that's why it is so problematic for the two to be reconciled. And it's paraphrased because I don't know the exact wording, but once I heard that, so many things kind of clicked into place for me.
Well, if that's yeah, no, I like it. And I was gonna say, if that's your paraphrasing, it's very well done. Thank you.
I think the way it was presented to me was specifically life lives in the gray, and then the explanation was backtracking back to the law. The law is very black and white, and that's why it's problematic when applied to human behavior.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.